for all of us. It's about predicting where the consumer is going and getting half of it right.
One of the things we want to do is create ads that don't suck.
Embracing change creates great possibility.
I'm Alan Hart, and this is Marketing Today.
Today on the show, I've got Rob Holland. Rob is the CEO of Feedback Loop, a technology growth company that provides an agile research platform for rapid consumer feedback. He's been obsessing about customers over more than 30 years, scaling businesses across CPG, retail, digital media, and marketing technology, and most recently, the research industries. He's worked for companies such as Oracle, Datalogix, and the Nielsen Company. On the show today, Rob and I talk about Feedback Loop, agile research, what it is, how it can be applied, and some actual case studies with Farmers Insurance and their new venture Toggle. I hope you enjoy this conversation with Rob Holland. Rob, welcome to the show.
Hi, Alan. Great to be here.
It's nice to have you. I always like to start with something a little personal, maybe just to get to know each other a little bit better, and for listeners to hear your story. Where'd you grow up?
I'm a native New Yorker. I grew up in Staten Island and spent time there through high school before going out to the West Coast with my family and then going to university and running off into the professional world. So native New Yorker, born and raised, and super excited now because I'm a lifelong New York Mets fan, and Steve Cohen's just bought the team. So I'm really excited about that too.
That sounds awesome. I didn't know the connection to Staten Island. That's funny because my wife's family, I guess both sides actually. Her family's from Staten Island, her dad in particular. And they're typical Staten Island, like Italian type family, if you picture it.
I can picture it. I have it, actually.
Yeah. That's funny. Yeah. So most of her great uncles are passed away, unfortunately, but there was this one guy, Uncle Rudy. He didn't want to cross Uncle Rudy. I'm pretty sure he knew people that worked for cement companies,
Yeah.
Let's talk about your path. You're now CEO at Feedback Loop. What was the path on your journey? I know you started in finance and had stops in CPG and different types of industries. Give me a little rundown if you don't mind.
Yeah, so I think there are really two threads on my career path. One is I've always been connected to the consumer in some way, working with consumer packaged good companies like Clorox or retailers like Safeway, a bunch of time with Nielsen, working on consumer data and market data, and then moving over into the startup world with ad tech and MarTech, where it's all about personalizing ads and personalizing consumer shoppers for purchasing on marketing MarTech. So winding up a Feedback Loop, it's just a natural progression of my experience working with consumers. On the functional side, I started out as finance, corporate finance and operational finance, moved into marketing analytics because we were working with lots of data and numbers on the finance side. And then that transitioned to market research and running database products over at Nielsen and moved into more of a product role. And then started running into more general management positions in startups. And it's kind of taken me where I'm at today.
Interesting. Talked to a number of folks recently on the podcast that kind of had that early finance background and are now in marketing or related marketing functions, or whether it's GM roles or otherwise. Curious, did you look back on that as an asset, or do you feel like, I'm sure it helps you in your day-to-day job as a CEO, knowing how finance works, but I'm just curious, if it felt natural to go from finance to product to GM and et cetera.
Yeah, I was the type of finance, which could be very broad. I was very much an operational financial planning and or manufacturing operations or logistics. So I was very much connected to the operations of the businesses. So, but it was definitely an advantage. I really noticed it quite a bit when I took my first product job at Nielsen, and I was running a lot of the products for Nielsen's panels and databases. And I truly understood how the products made money, why I could understand why they'd be value propositions for our customers. I could understand how the investments we were looking to make to improve the product would help the business. And I was able to really make that connection so that I was able to integrate that into my product expertise and really drive that. And also, actually, really, one of the side benefits was I was able to speak the CFO's language. So I was able to get the resources I needed to do what I want to do with the products. I had an advantage because I understood how the cash worked and how the company made money and why my investments were going to be good for the business. So it was great from a commercial perspective and it was great from an internal perspective. And it really was one of my X factors.
Yeah, I can see that for sure. I mean, it's definitely understanding the levers. You described it as the way in which the company makes money, or those levers that you can pull from a financial perspective that marketing or the product itself can influence. It's key. It's key. And I hope listeners are listening.
It helps you get budget. So it's good to, if you don't have the skill, find somebody who does and be their BFF, because it will help you tremendously get the resources you need. That's the too long, don't read.
Awesome. Well, let's talk about Feedback Loop. What is the company? What do you guys do?
We're a tech company. Our technology is an Agile research platform that provides rapid consumer feedback.
Awesome. And who do you guys serve, if you don't mind me asking?
Yeah, we are primarily geared towards two audiences. So our technology simplifies the whole consumer testing and feedback process by eliminating about 30 steps down to about 6. And so we work to serve product teams, marketing teams, business teams who want to do their own research. And we work with research teams who want to be more agile and also support businesses who are moving more towards agile business and product development.
Got it. Okay. I know since you joined the company as CEO, you guys have rebranded, I think shortly after you joined, from Alpha as the name of the company to Feedback Loop. I'd love to talk about that, like what drove that from just looking at it as an outsider, going from Alpha, if you will, to Feedback Loop. It looked like you're broadening the scope of decisions and points in the product journey that you could influence, but love to hear what your rationale was.
Yeah, it's really an evolution of our whole origin story. So our founder, Thor Ernsten, he was a coder and he was a gaming coder. And one of the things that he had embraced Agile before Agile was even big. And one of the things that he saw as a problem in the market was the ability to get rapid consumer feedback. So he saw the opportunity to create a platform that would provide that directly to product teams that were Agile product teams, and in a way that they could kind of go around or short circuit and get the information they needed and the data they needed so they could make better product decisions faster. So it was really very focused on upper funnel, alpha, even pre-beta, so alpha type product development. And that was really where the beginning of the name Alpha originated from. Over time, our platform has evolved, and it is not just an alpha platform for agile product teams, although we play very much in that space, understanding user discovery and basic concept testing and doing some comparative testing, et cetera. But as we really grew with our customers, the type of testing we do for rapid consumer feedback really fits in all elements of the product development cycle or the innovation cycle. And we also started to engage researchers more and more as well. And they were not just concerned about pre-beta testing. So we would just kept pulling ourselves into more broader use cases with bigger audiences of customer profiles and more use cases. So we got to a point where Alpha wasn't really descriptive of what we did, and it really wasn't as clear. So we wound up, especially as we started to get bigger in the market, we'd have to explain it, and it just didn't really fit with where we're going. So what was interesting was we would constantly be using the words with our customers and internally around feedback, customer feedback, feedback between consumers and business teams, feedback between business teams and research. And so feedback and the loops we were creating were just very obvious. And so we were able to just step back and envision as we go to our next chapter and really look to expand out our platform and expand the use cases. We decided that it would be really impactful to rebrand around a broader set of use cases. How we landed on the decision, and we were able to simplify and be more direct in our communication and simplify our value proposition to the market.
So you've talked to the feedback loop concept and this rapid consumer feedback that you're able to generate through the platform that you guys have developed. currently am in a research role myself. I've done research all through many parts of my career, but I probably say that I'm more of a marketer than a researcher. And I'm assuming that the early impetus for the company was to move faster than the research department could move. That's obviously the research departments, most good research departments have now caught up to the Agile framework and are trying to expedite the learnings and insights that they generate themselves. And makes sense that you guys are now encountering those as stakeholders inside your accounts, et cetera. As you've been building this platform and been operating in this market, like, has it changed at all? I mean, other than the fact that like you've expanded the feedback that loops that you're interacting with and you're supporting, do you feel like research in general is changing?
Oh yes, and that's happening without a doubt. And it's really also impacting the way we are evolving our positioning because the market is constantly changing. COVID aside, what was happening 5 years ago, people were talking about digital transformation. They were talking about agile everything. They were talking about generational migration and technological advancements, and all this happening in these big thematic pushes that were really changing consumers, consumer expectations, behaviors, and business models. And that's real. And all that requires a level of agility that is really, it's something people have been talking about, but it's really taking root. So the biggest problems we have, for example, for our ideal customer profiles are the product or business teams. They're moving so fast that they have to make decisions flying blind. And the research teams, if they're even supporting these businesses, they just can't, they're having trouble just trying to keep up. And those are two big problems that we solve. And really, the whole concept of agile research is evolving and taking shape around those big core problems in the market. And that's exactly where we're focused on helping to develop that out and making the concept of agile research tangible and real, and not just an expression that says, boy, move faster and just keep doing more work with the same or less resources.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Well, I can imagine like the move fast component to the typical traditional like market research person, and I can sympathize. I'm sitting in a role like that now. Move fast. I always remember that phrase. I think it's been made famous at Facebook or somewhere. Move fast and break things. It scares the bejesus out of me, you know. So let's talk about how you guys define like what does agile research look like, and how do you speak to it? How do you talk about it?
At its core, agile research provides directional guidance early and often to guide decisions that might otherwise be made by opinion or rank rather than data. And so it really eliminates dependencies and friction that can slow down traditional research. And it trades off a bit of precision, which may or may not actually matter, for useful feedback that enables rapid learning and iterative improvement. So it's small chunks quickly. And the greatest, one of the best analogies I use is, I'll use a windshield wiper rainstorm analogy. So imagine you and I we're about to go out and we're going someplace, and we might have Google Maps and everything else. We're going on a road trip, and you know where we're going, and I've never been there before. And I'm going to follow you, even with Google Maps or Navigator. I'm going to follow you. And we start going, and it starts pouring rain out. Pouring rain. What do? What's the first thing you do when the rain is going? Even with a map, so you know where you want to go, you turn on the windshield wipers. And the reason you're turning on those windshield wipers, which, by the way, just swipe and clear the rain, and then the rain's back and swipe it, is to give you intermittent, rapid feedback on what's going on in front of you so that you could stay on the road, follow the car, stay on the path that you've set, and you don't veer off and let something bad happen. And that's really the best agile research allows the business users and the research teams to operate in that kind of a manner. So it gives you enough information that you can take the next step and the next step and the next step in an informed manner.
Yeah, I really love that analogy because like it works for both sides of the equation, right? The product marketer or the marketer and the researcher. Because one, it takes the pressure off the researcher to design the most elegant study that they've ever designed in custom research, right? Because that's not what it's about. It's about just getting me enough clarity to make a decision to move to the next decision. And from a product and marketer standpoint, it is about getting that clarity. in the moment and at the moment you need it before you hit the ditch, so to speak. I really like that analogy. I hadn't heard that one before.
Yeah, and it's funny because the other thing, which is also part of the play on our name, feedback loop, we really do create strong loops between the research teams and the business teams, the marketers, the brands, the product teams, the innovation teams that are driving, spending the money. Because what happens is these teams really do want to operate quickly, but they need to have some protection and some guide rails. Think of the buffer zones when you take your young kids bowling, so that they can still operate, but they're still protecting. And research teams have a fiduciary responsibility. They get a bad rap because they are conservative by nature. They're there to inform, but they're also there to protect the business. And that's an important role. And what our platform does is takes the principles of Agile, applies them to research, automates processes that take time and effort and cost money so that we can increase the speed, but puts enough parameters and boundaries around them, and there's enough research rigor behind them that the types of testing that you're doing on the platform and the types of data you're getting can be controlled in as centralized or decentralized manner as your corporate practices allow. And it allows movement within the company quickly and cost effectively. And it really does open up avenues to do really great things.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds pretty nice. I mean, and I'm envisioning in terms of like how the platform works, that you've got, like you said, these like predefined modules, or maybe think of Lego blocks that I can execute against with minimal effort. Either a product person could do it, and the guardrails have been predefined by the research team or in concert with the research team, and that's been democratized, if you will, within the organization. Or if I'm more control hungry researcher, I can push the buttons myself, but it makes me faster and meet the speed of the business.
That's exactly right.
Okay, good. I got it.
You got it. I'm going to get you on some sales calls straight away.
Well, I'm glad I got it. So let's talk a little bit about I know you got some great customer examples. I'd love to hear about one of the companies you guys have worked with and their ability to implement or benefit from this agile research approach.
Yeah, it's funny. We work with companies across many different industries or verticals or sectors. We work with big, very established companies and startups. So really, if a company has the need and the ethos for Agile and they're consumer facing in any way, shape, or form, we kind of fit the bill. A great example is one of our premier customers, Farmers, the insurance company, which is over 100 years old. And Farmers operates a lot of their core business has been developed through a very extensive agent network. So you go to your agent, you talk to them on the phone, maybe you go to their office, you have a lot of paperwork, and you build a relationship for decades. What we saw is massive disruption coming from generational shifts, technology changes in consumer expectations and behaviors. And we saw you saw in the market a company you may be familiar with, Lemonade, which created an app for renters insurance. It was geared towards younger millennials and Gen Z, and it was to really bring the whole concept of renters insurance to a whole new generation of people, delivered it a totally different way. And that was an amazing success. And it was a shot over the bow for established companies. And so Farmers created a new ventures group. It was basically a startup inside the company. They created a brand called Toggle. And the idea was you were able to go and create the same version, leveraging all the infrastructure that Farmers has, but putting a whole new direct-to-consumer spin on it and going out and competing in the market. And in the course of less than a year, I think it was around 9 months, Toggle was created. They carved off a team. They got a budget and they were going after it. And we partnered with them. They licensed our platform. And over that period of time, we ran over 250 tests, talked to over 100,000 customers, to help them optimize and build the product. And that is something that they took to market. It's one of the fastest growing products in their portfolio. It was an effective response. And now they're leveraging that offensively, saying we have all these other insurance products, let's take it out in the market. And we were there to help them figure out things from branding to language to color schemes to how do you talk about what's most important to this generation, call out as the main features of the messaging. And it was a crazy successful example.
That's awesome. That's by definition, an example of a tried and true company launching an entire new business model and then using insights to drive the business decisions and the product development along the way. And the lemonade, shot across the bow. That's a purely interesting company too. I had a tangential exposure to it because I think around the time they were launching, I was actually working in Durham, North Carolina at a agency that was literally shared a wall with Dan Ariely's Center for Advanced Hindsight group. And Dan and his team was working with the Lemonade team on like the consumer behavior aspect of how people buy and risk sharing parameters and things like that. So I actually got to see some of that research that they were doing as well and hear some of the stories secondhand. But yeah, no, that's a phenomenal story about Toggle and farmers' ability to adapt to the marketplace changes.
Yeah, and the need in the market has never been greater. These things were happening regardless, but with COVID, virtually every human on Earth literally is going through profound changes and their behaviors, their expectations are changing too. And that means long-standing axioms need to be at least they need to be revalidated. And if you're working on assumptions and you're not really understanding what's going on, you run the risk of either seeing your business be put, major risks to your business that are unanticipated, or threats emerging that you don't see, or you miss massive opportunities to take what you have and get offensive with it and move forward. So the whole idea of getting rapid consumer feedback to solve rapidly changing needs in very dynamic markets has never been greater. And we don't see any reason to believe it's going to go away anytime in the future.
No, I would tend to agree with you that there's so much uncertainty in the marketplace right now. If you're a marketer and trying to sell anything, the channels are disrupted, the consumer behaviors are being forcibly, regulatedly disrupted on what they can and cannot do. So yeah, I totally agree. Definitely a need for fast moments of clarity as you make decisions, when otherwise you would be operating with that dirty windshield. I was just curious if there's any other points or advice or examples you wanted to share before we switch gears.
I think just to play on the opposite side of that, we're also working with a company, Rhino, which is a startup in the space, and we're helping them go to market for the first time. And that's a great example of how this is a universal problem that can work multiple ends of the spectrum. We're working with CPG companies who are doing some work with cleaning products and trying to figure out how these 100-year-old brands can reevaluate and really reconnect with consumers. We work with media companies because streaming is changing media consumption, and there's a whole bunch of in the entertainment industry of trying to understand how consumers are going to go back and watch movies. So it's literally endless. The possibilities, transportation companies, everything is changing, and I just think as your audience knows, the job of a marketer, the job of anyone who's in business is really to figure out what's happening in your market and how do you respond to it to defend and also take advantage of opportunities. And rapid feedback has never been more important. And we are trying to make that as easy as possible to get to as quickly for as many people as possible.
Yeah, no, I mean, as you describe it, I mean, even industries where, to your point, you made this point, but it's hitting home with me, is that even industries where there were understood truths, right? Like an example, maybe restaurant business, right? Like, of course, I need to have a clean environment for when customers come in. But I think given what we've gone through, what we're continuing to go through with now new lockdowns, and this is going to drag on into the middle of next year, those industries, I mean, there's simple questions like, what is the best signal of cleanliness? Like, what do consumers want to see for me to demonstrate that I have good hygiene practices and that I'm, adapting to the situation to invite them back in? Just on the very simplest question, right? Like, how do I signal that I'm doing my job, my part to keep them safe? But even to your point, like media companies, new consumption behaviors. I could N of one with me, my wife, and my daughter. I mean, the number of like new shows we're experimenting with is unbelievable because we try to get some entertainment. And I'm crossing platforms like I've never done before, where I may have always been in Netflix just because it's been there. Now I'm experimenting with Apple TV and all these other things that are available to us just on our TV set tops.
Yeah. Everything's been accelerated, and there's no putting that genie back in the bottle at the end of the day. So It's an exciting time. It's terrifying and exciting at the same time, and that makes it interesting and that makes it fun.
Yeah, I'm glad there's companies like yours that are helping at least make it easier to get clarity and ahead of big decisions or decisions you're trying to make to adjust in these times. Well, let's switch gears. Like I said, we always love to get to know the person behind the microphone. My favorite question to ask that listeners know is there been an experience of your past that defines or makes up who you are today?
That's a great question, and my default knee-jerk answer is I moved around a fair amount into neighborhoods as I was growing up, and that sort of gave me a flexibility. And then when I was in the middle of the tail end of high school, my family uprooted from Staten Island. They moved to Southern Cal. We went to LA in the Valley, and we had to settle down. And that was a big uprooting. And you can imagine a 17, 16-year-old Rob was not very happy about that. And but what I learned from that was I learned that you can be really pulled out from your roots and put into a new environment, and you can adapt very quickly. And ironically, that's not, there's no like connection here to feedback loop or what we've just been speaking. But what it did was it proved to me that you can adapt and that you can always grow. And I've really leaned into that my whole career. If I really reflect, I've taken big changes. I've gone companies, I've changed career paths, and just being comfortable with change, that's been a real game changer for me. And, it's something that it really does create a framework that I operate under ever since.
Yeah. I mean, I can't even imagine being in high school in Staten Island, going to the other coast. The culture shock alone would kill some people.
Well, I was like the Karate Kid without the karate.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. Yeah, no Mr. Miyagi to help you, I guess, either.
It's Ralph Macchio.
That's awesome. What advice would you give your younger self if you're starting all over?
As much as I love the change, I also would tell myself, don't be afraid to move even faster and take more calculated risks. A good example of that is I've had a great career and I've done work with phenomenal people and amazing companies. And I've done international and US work, and I've done different functional work. And I've worked with some of the best companies on the globe. But the last 10 years, I made the transition from big corporations to venture-backed companies. And I absolutely love it. I love the whole thing. I love the pressure. I love the fact that if you don't come to work for a couple of days, things that are really important don't happen. And it took me 2/3 of my career to really embrace that. And I kind of looked at it from afar for probably about 10 years before I took the jump. And just don't be afraid. It's going to work out, and trust your instincts even a little bit more as you take calculated risks.
Yeah, that's good advice. I like the calculated risk part too. That's the financial planner
Exactly.
or financial planning coming out. What's the assumptions on that risk? Yeah. That's awesome. This next question is kind of a silly one, but I kind of like some of the answers, and I build my shopping list from time to time based on what people say. So curious if there's been an impactful purchase of $100 or less in the last, say, 6 to 12 months for you.
I'm going to talk about something that I've actually just done very, very recently. I found a product called Agendio, agendio.com, agendio.com, not a paid plug. It is a fully customizable planner. This is a geeky thing, right? So, but I'll tee it up. So I was getting ready to buy my calendar for next year, and the way I'm working has changed so much because I'm at home. I needed to really just create something different. And I wasn't pleased with anything I had. I wanted to simplify the process. I wanted to just make it really rote so that I could get into better routines. And I stumbled across them, and I spent a little bit of time configuring it. And I've created myself an integrated planner workflow that is changing the way I operate, like, profoundly. And for under $100, you can do it. And it comes to you. It's all service, so it comes online and it's just changed my life.
I love that. I've got to check it out. I've never seen a customizable planner, but man, that would be helpful. Because I've seen people, I still haven't found my rhythm yet on my own, like ability to do this in my journal, but I've seen people, use blank journals and divide pages in certain ways. And, they use that to keep track of what's going on throughout the day and the follow-up items, et cetera. And they've worked out this perfect system, but I would love to have a templatized version of something like that for myself.
That's exactly what I've done. And so check it out.
That's awesome. Yeah, I definitely will. Definitely will. Two more questions for you before I let you go. More on the marketing side of things. Curious if there are any brands or companies or causes that you're following or you think other people should be taking notice of.
There's so much happening on the brand side. I like to almost stalk a few brands and watch and see how they're evolving and how they're growing. And I'm going to talk about big brands that everybody knows, not really. I could go on the niche side as well, but I'm watching Apple continue to evolve. They're in this period where they're really not creating as big of brand new products, and the products they have penetrated and mature, but they're still able to create something that resonates emotionally and functionally to people to get them to upgrade and to move forward. And they just do it so gracefully that you don't even really know that it's happening because they've become such a brand that's so part of everybody's lives. And I'm just continually impressed by that. But they really do add value every single time they release something as well. So whether it's speed or it's a slightly more user-friendly UI or it's a new service. And I watch them. I watch Amazon and now Prime becoming such a big brand across so many parts of our lives, particularly with stay at home and the change to remote everything. And now Prime is its own brand, and you see trucks and planes. And it's really just amazing how they went from selling books 25 years ago to literally the most pervasive company in the face of the earth right now, physically, logistically, not just virtually. And there's no slowing down. So I'm watching them and I look for patterns or just themes, and I'm watching how they're building their brands even when they're established. And it's just a great thing for a well-known and established brand or a company that just rebranded like us last month, the feedback loop, and how do we take that to market? I think there's a lot of lessons in there.
Yeah, I agree with you. I know the Apple one, I hadn't really paid a ton of attention to them recently, to your point, because it hasn't been big launches. There's no new iPhone, so to speak. I mean, there is a new iPhone, but you know what I mean? Like, there's no iPhone that they've brought to the world recently. But to your point, like, they just continuously surround their consumer, whether it's the Apple Card from a financial services standpoint, the Apple TV I mentioned earlier. I hadn't given that a try until recently, and it's a pretty slick service. It's very Apple-y. And the Amazon and the Prime side too. Like, I mean, there's not a given. This probably says way too much about me, but there's probably not. We probably don't go 3 days without an Amazon delivery of some sort. And you're right. The interesting thing to me about Amazon and some of the others, I put Elon Musk in this camp too. He drives me crazy, but like Bezos and Musk, and there's others in this list too. But it's interesting that they've gone from digital and virtual technology, right? Like things you can't touch and feel, to the most almost like the Industrial Revolution again with the things that they're doing, right? Like the distribution networks, the trucks, the airplanes, the rocket ships. They've gone from the digital to the real, if you will. And I hadn't given it much thought in terms of the size and the scope of that, but definitely big pushes in that direction.
It's so true. And I think it's part of the maturation of digital transformation. It ultimately integrates both. And you see it in the example we talked about with Toggle. You see it everywhere. That's how you know it's really maturing and really getting to mainstream. And that's why it's growing so fast, because it's getting to the point like a car, you just have to put a key into it, not even a key anymore, push a button and start it. And you don't have to know anything about the car. You don't have to know it's digital or it's analog. It just is now. And that's when you hit that tipping point. You go to the late majority in the markets, and that's how companies just explode on these growth curves. And it's happening so naturally to us at this stage that it's remarkable.
Yeah, 100% agree. 100% agree. Well, last question for you. What do you feel like is the biggest opportunity or threat for marketers right now?
Can I get a little potentially controversial without trying to take any sides?
Yeah, you can go Staten Island on me if you want. Go
All
ahead.
right, I love it. So maybe I'll start talking like my native tongue.
There you go.
I think there's a third rail out there for marketers, and it doesn't matter where you sit on the overall spectrum. I'm not going to get too political here, but left or right. Everything seems to have so much purpose right now, a deeper purpose, that if you don't agree with that purpose, you polarize major segments of the market that are just equally good people with just different perspectives and points of view. And it's taking the fun out of so many things, and it's forcing marketers and brands to take sides in places that they really have no real need to get into. And I think it's a very dangerous place to play. And we see great brands and great organizations getting wrapped up in the middle of this. And at the end of the day, we're all people, we're all human. We have differences of views on some things, but it really, just be careful of dragging your brand, your company, or your business into these waters unless it's really, really critical to what service or product you're bringing to market, because I don't know how you steer out of it. And I see a lot of companies getting themselves in trouble right now.
No, I 100% am on board with what you're talking about. And the recent, we're recording this right after the election. For those that are going to listen to this a little bit later when it airs, it came to light as you look at the electoral map in the United States, right? And you see the red and the blue. And there was a great digital visualization done, a couple of them actually on LinkedIn I was looking at, where one was, instead of hard red and hard blue, they shaded it in kind of a red to blue spectrum. So you saw, like actually most of the country's purple. And then there was another one that showed kind of like the density of red and blue based on population, because that's actually where people vote. It's not that there's like these huge red land masses out there that make it look bigger than it is, because there's just fewer people in those areas. And it was looking at both of those, like, to your point, like there's this notion of we're allowing ourselves to become more and more polarized. And obviously that's going to seep into many, many decisions, including things like purpose and taking a side or taking a stand as a company. But I do feel like there is this need for all of us to stay centered and focus on what unites us or what brings us together. And from a marketing standpoint, I feel like that's where the massive markets are, right? That's where you can get that growth that you're looking for, is on what brings us together, not appealing to one side or the other.
It just makes it complicated, and there's a time and a place for positions and whatnot, but it's just some things just can be safe spaces for everybody. And I think that's, to your question, I think that's one of the biggest threats, and it is an opportunity too for marketers today.
Yeah, I've recommended this book before to listeners, but I'll recommend it again just because I think it's a great, if you're a marketer and trying to figure out this issue of where to take a stand and how to do it and not get yourself into trouble. There's a great book by a friend of mine, Peter Horst, called Marketing in the Era of Fake News. And he has a great, if you don't read anything else in the book, there's a great framework that he uses that talks about, it really starts with not putting your head in the sand, but figuring out what your true values are that a business has, right? And then working your way out from there to the level of comfort that you have to step into these areas, right? Like, but you got to start with what your company lives from a value standpoint before you can go take a stand on an issue, right? Because you need to make sure that your values, line up to those things that you're going to take a stand on.
Yep. Couldn't agree more.
Rob, I've really enjoyed having you on the show, and look forward to following the company.
Thank you, Alan. It's been a pleasure, and it's been a great experience. So I'm glad to be here, and thank you very much.
Hi, it's Alan again. Marketing Today was created and produced by me. If you're new to Marketing Today, please feel free to write us a review on iTunes or your favorite listening platform. Don't forget to subscribe and tell your friends and colleagues about the show.
I love to hear from listeners, and you can contact me at marketingtodaypodcast.com.
There you'll also find complete show notes with links to anything we talk about on any episode. You can also search our archives. I'm Alan Hart, and this is Marketing Today.